I don't care if this blanket's got ants on it, Tessa, Rowan said, adjusting his daughter's baseball cap as she plopped down beside the picnic basket. We're making memories, all right? Tessa giggled, her gap-toothed smile lighting up the patchy grass around them. You said ants are part of nature, Daddy. So I'm letting them join our picnic. Rowan Sutter laughed, even though his stomach twisted at the thought of the overdue rent notice folded in his back pocket. He tore open the sandwich he'd made from the last slices of bread in the loaf, handing it to Tessa with a wink. Bon appetit, mademoiselle. They were at Crestwood Park, the quieter side, where the trees shaded the dirt patches and the city skyline peeked through the branches. It wasn't fancy, but to Tessa it was magic. He glanced around the park and spotted a woman walking toward the same shaded area, holding a book in one hand and a coffee in the other. Her dark sunglasses covered half her face, but her long brunette hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and she wore jeans and sneakers like she didn't care about impressing anyone. She paused at the edge of the grassy patch, clearly noticing the small blanket he and Tessa were on. Rowan gave her a polite nod. She hesitated, then smiled. Mind if I sit on the other side? I promise not to steal your ants. Rowan chuckled.
Sure.
But fair warning, we're midway through a very intense peanut butter and jelly operation. The woman laughed and sat down, leaving a respectful gap between her and their blanket. I'll try not to interfere with the artistry. Tessa, never shy, squinted at her. Are you allergic to peanut butter? Nope, the woman answered. I'm actually a big fan. Then you can stay, Tessa said matter-of-factly before taking a huge bite of her sandwich. Rowan shook his head. She's the boss, apparently. I like her style, the woman said, then turned to him. I'm Kiera. Kiera Thorne. Rowan, he replied. And this is Tessa, who only shares her snacks with people she thoroughly interrogates first. Kiera smiled, her gaze softening on the little girl. It's nice to meet both of you. They sat there for a while, the sun warming the grass between them. Tessa chattered away, telling Kiera about her drawing contest at school, her favorite dinosaur, and how she wanted a puppy, but only if it was purple. Rowan watched Kiera carefully. Most people would have nodded politely or tuned out entirely, but not her. She really listened and laughed at the right moments like she genuinely enjoyed being there. He hadn't seen someone look at his daughter that way in a long time. So, Kiera said when Tessa ran off to chase a squirrel, is this your Saturday tradition? Only when I can afford bread, Rowan said, cracking a tired smile. She blinked. That's not a joke, is it? Nope. But it's fine. He looked after Tessa. She thinks we're just having fun. I don't want her to know I'm struggling. Kiera's expression shifted, but she didn't pity him. That was the one thing Rowan couldn't stand, pity. Instead, she nodded like she understood something deeper. I think you're doing a great job, she said softly. He looked at her for a second too long, unsure why her words hit him harder than he expected. Maybe it was the way she said it like she meant it. They ran into her again, the next weekend. And the one after that. It became a thing. Rowan would spread the same tattered blanket on the same spot under the same tree, and somehow, Kiera would show up with her book and coffee, sometimes pastries she couldn't finish, which Tessa happily devoured. One Saturday, Kiera showed up with a sketchbook. I heard someone's an artist, she said, handing it to Tessa. Tessa's eyes lit up. You got this for me? You mentioned you ran out of pages, Kiera said, sitting cross-legged on the grass. Figured it was important. Rowan stared at the brand name on the cover. It wasn't some grocery store brand, it was real, expensive. He opened his mouth to say something, but Kiera just smiled and said, Don't worry. It was on sale. She was lying, but gracefully. The next few weeks blurred into moments that made Rowan's chest feel lighter. Tessa adored Kiera, and Rowan found himself looking forward to her visits more than he cared to admit. She never talked about work. He figured she was a freelancer or something flexible like that. She wore casual clothes but had expensive sunglasses. Little things didn't add up, but he never pushed. He didn't have the right to. One Saturday, as Tessa ran down to the nearby pond to throw pebbles, Rowan and Kiera stayed behind. "You know," he said, watching Tessa squeal as ducks waddled toward her, "I never expected
this. You.
Showing up every week." Kiera shrugged, but her voice was soft. "It's the best part of my week." He turned to her.
Why?
She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Because it's real. Because you and Tessa. You feel like home." Rowan's throat tightened. "I haven't felt like home in a long time." Neither of them spoke for a beat. Then Kiera leaned closer. "Come to dinner with me next weekend." Rowan blinked. "Like a real dinner?" She smiled.
Yeah. Nuance.
"Just us. And maybe Tessa, if she promises not to interrogate the waiter." He laughed, but then hesitated. "I can't afford. I didn't ask you to pay," she said. "I asked you to come." Something about the way she said it made it hard to argue. So he nodded. "All right. But only if there's dessert." "There's always dessert," Kiera said. The following Friday night, Rowan dressed in the best shirt he owned, clean, ironed, and maybe 3 years out of style. Tessa wore a dress she'd only ever used for school concerts. Kiera picked them up in a sleek black car that looked brand new. Rowan stared at it for a long moment. "You rent this or something?" he asked. Kiera smiled. "Something like that." She took them to a restaurant that had chandeliers the size of bathtubs and waiters that called him sir. Tessa's eyes nearly popped out of her head. Rowan leaned over as they sat at the table. "Kiera, this is too much." "No," she said, meeting his eyes. "It's not." That night, they laughed, ate, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Rowan didn't feel like a man barely hanging on. He felt seen. After dessert, as Tessa admired the fountain near the patio, Rowan turned to Kiera. "Who are you really?" he asked, his voice low. Kiera looked at him, all traces of humor gone. "I'm someone who's falling for a man who has no idea how rare he is." Rowan's breath caught, and for once, he didn't have a single thing to say. Rowan stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of the only blazer he owned. It didn't quite fit across the shoulders anymore, but it was clean, and that was enough. In the other room, Tessa hummed to herself as she colored in her new sketchbook, now nearly half full. He watched her through the open door, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration as she shaded in a rocket ship with a crayon worn down to the paper. His phone buzzed. Kiera was waiting outside. He leaned into the room. "Tess, time to go." She jumped up, grabbing her drawing and hugging it to her chest. "Can I show Kiera my astronaut?"
Definitely, he said.
Outside, the black car gleamed under the street lamp. It wasn't the same one from last week. This one was longer, sleeker. A driver stepped out to open the door for them. Rowan hesitated. Kiera leaned out from the back seat. "Don't look at me like that. It's a car. It has wheels. It moves." He slid in beside her, Tessa between them. "You have a driver now?" "Technically, I always did," she said. He looked at her, eyebrows raised. She didn't elaborate. Instead, she turned to Tessa. "So, tell me about this astronaut." The restaurant they drove to was even grander than the last. Not in a flashy way, more like the kind of place where the napkins were folded into swans and the menus came without prices. Rowan didn't miss the way the host greeted Kiera by name, or how she slipped something into the maitre d's hand without drawing attention. They were led to a private alcove lit by low golden light. The table was round, surrounded by plush velvet chairs. Tessa sank into hers like it was a throne. A waiter arrived with a tray of small dishes, things Rowan didn't recognize. Tessa looked at one and whispered, "Is that an egg made of gold?" Kiera leaned over. "Close. That's a quail egg with truffle foam." Rowan blinked. "That's a sentence I've never heard before." She laughed softly. You'll like it. He didn't want to, but he did. Later, after Tessa had finished her dessert and was nodding off against Rowan's side, Kiera pushed her plate away and folded her hands on the table. I want to tell you something, she said. Rowan stiffened. Okay. She glanced at Tessa, then back at him. Not here. He nodded slowly. They left the restaurant through a side entrance, the driver already waiting. Kiera gave him an address Rowan didn't recognize. They drove through downtown, past the parts of the city Rowan rarely visited: glass towers, art galleries, boutique hotels with names that sounded foreign. Then they turned onto a street lined with old brick buildings restored to perfection. The car stopped in front of a tall wrought iron gate. Rowan looked out the window. Where are we? Kiera reached for the door handle. Home. They walked through the gate, past a manicured courtyard, and into a lobby that looked like it belonged in a magazine. A doorman tipped his hat to Kiera as they passed. An elevator opened the moment they approached. Inside, Rowan held Tessa in his arms, her head resting on his shoulder as Kiera tapped a code into a small panel. The elevator ascended swiftly, without a single jolt. The doors opened to reveal an entire floor, a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, soft lighting, and furniture that looked like it had been designed for a photo shoot. The city glittered below them, stretching out in every direction. Rowan stood frozen. This is yours. Kiera nodded. He stepped inside, slowly, like the floor might vanish under him. You said you had an apartment. I do, she said. This one. You said you were freelance. I never said that, she replied gently. He turned to her, his voice low. You let me believe you were like me. No, Kiera said. I let you see me without what I own. He set Tessa down on the couch, covering her with a throw blanket. She curled up without stirring. Kiera walked to the window, her arms crossed. I didn't lie, Rowan. I just didn't lead with the money. He moved to stand beside her. Why not? Because every time I do, people see dollar signs. They treat me like a walking inheritance. She looked at him. You didn't. You saw me. He stared out over the skyline. And now? I want to know if that changes anything. Rowan didn't answer right away. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the city below and the sound of Tessa's soft breathing. Finally, he said, It's not that I'm angry. I'm just trying to catch up. I get that. I've spent so long worrying about every dollar. About whether Tessa eats enough, has warm shoes, gets to school on time. You live in a world where people bring your car around for you. I don't want to live in that world alone. He looked at her. What do you want? You, she said simply. And Tessa. He turned toward her. You don't know what that means, Kiera. It's not just spontaneous picnics and art supplies. It's scraped knees and parent-teacher meetings and nights where I pass out from exhaustion before I remember to eat.
I want all of it, she said.
Not just the easy parts. He laughed once bitterly. There are no easy parts. She stepped closer. Then I want the hard ones, too. He searched her face, looking for cracks, disbelief, anything to make this make more sense. Instead, all he saw was truth. I'm not some project for you to fix, he said. She nodded. And I'm not asking you to be grateful for anything. Just honest. He exhaled. This is a lot. I know. Rowan sat down on the wide sofa beside his sleeping daughter. He brushed a curl from her forehead, grounding himself. When I first saw you in that park, he said, I thought you were just someone who liked quiet spots and old books. I am. You're also someone who owns a penthouse and eats quail eggs. I can be both. He looked up at her. You're not afraid of what this could turn into? I'm terrified, she admitted. That surprised him. But I've spent years surrounded by people who want things from me, who measure worth in numbers. And then I met you. And suddenly, none of that mattered anymore. He leaned back. I don't know how to belong in your world. Then we make one that belongs to us. He watched her for a long moment. Then he asked, why me? Kiera's voice was quiet. Because you love with your whole heart. Because you fight for someone else's happiness, even when it costs you. Because you didn't need to impress me. You just were. You. Rowan swallowed hard. I don't have anything to offer you. You have everything I've ever wanted. He looked down at Tessa. She needs stability. She needs routine. I can't just uproot her. Kiera nodded. Then I'll plant roots where you are. He stared at her, stunned. I mean it, she said. I don't care about which address. I care about who's inside it. For the first time since he'd stepped into her world, he felt something unshakable. Hope. He stood, crossing the room to her. I don't know how this works, he said. We figured out, she replied. He reached for her hand, and she didn't hesitate. They stood there, two people from entirely different worlds, holding on like it meant something. Because it did. The following Monday, Rowan stood in the staff lounge at Westham Elementary, watching the coffee machine wheeze out the last of its strength. He poured the burnt remains into a chipped mug and leaned against the counter, trying to ignore the ache in his back from the weekend's late nights. Across the room, Mrs. Dillard from the front office eyed him over her glasses. You got a glow about you today, Sutter, she said, folding her crossword. Either that or the heat finally broke your spirit. Rowan offered a tired smile. Probably sunstroke. She chuckled and returned to her puzzle, but the truth buzzed under his skin like static. He hadn't been able to sleep since Saturday, not from worry, but from something else entirely. Possibility. Kiera had kissed him on the rooftop balcony before they left her penthouse. A real kiss, unhurried, full of meaning and promise. And terrifying. He left early that morning before Tessa woke, needing time to think. Kiera had insisted her driver take them home, and Rowan had reluctantly agreed. That entire night had felt like something borrowed from a life that didn't belong to him, and yet, he hadn't wanted to give it back. Now, as he sipped his bitter coffee, his phone buzzed again. A name flashed across the screen.
Kiera.
He hesitated, then stepped out into the hallway before answering. Hey.
Morning, she said.
Her voice was soft, but purposeful. You free after work? I've got Tessa, so it depends. Bring her. I want to show you both something. He frowned. Is this another let me casually change your life moment? Not exactly, she said. But I think you'll want to see it. He hesitated. I promise it's not a trap, she added. No golden eggs or velvet menus involved. He exhaled through a quiet laugh.
All right.
We'll come. After school, he picked up Tessa and swung by their apartment to grab her backpack. She chatted excitedly about a story she wrote in class while Rowan fastened her seatbelt in the back of Kiera's car. The driver greeted them by name now. That was new and strangely comforting. As they pulled away from the curb, Rowan glanced at Kiera. You're not going to tell me where we're going?
Nope, she said.
Tessa leaned over. Is it a surprise? The best kind, Kiera replied, her smile secretive. They drove for nearly 20 minutes, eventually turning onto a narrow street lined with single-story houses. There were no skyscrapers here, no luxury boutiques. Just rows of homes with porches, picket fences, and flower beds in various states of attempted maintenance. Kiera had the driver stop in front of a white house with faded shutters and a crooked mailbox. It wasn't run down, but it had clearly seen better days. Rowan stepped out of the car, confused. Kiera, what is this? She took Tessa's hand and led them toward the steps. This, she said, unlocking the door with a key from her bag, is yours. Rowan stared at her. What do you mean? She pushed the door open. The interior was empty but clean. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the polished wood floors and freshly painted walls. A faint scent of lemon hung in the air. It's been sitting in a trust my grandmother left me, she said. I've never used it. It's not in my name, it's in the foundation's. But I can lease it to you for $1 a year. He blinked. You're serious. I don't want you to feel like I'm giving you something. I'm not. I'm offering you and Tessa a chance to breathe. Tessa wandered into the kitchen, opening cabinets and giggling when she found a lazy Susan that spun. Rowan stepped into the living room, his voice low. Why this house? Because it's yours in every way that matters, Kiera said. It's got a yard, a quiet street, good schools nearby, and it's close to that park you love. He turned to her. I can't accept this. You're not accepting charity, she said. You're agreeing to live somewhere safe. Somewhere that doesn't leak when it rains. But I didn't earn this. You've earned every good thing that's coming, she said. You just don't believe it yet. He looked around the room again. The space was modest, but it felt like a home. Not a penthouse. Not a borrowed dream. Something real. Tessa ran back in and hugged his leg. Can we live here, Daddy? Please. He looked down at her, then up at Kiera. I'll think about it. That night, after putting Tessa to bed back at their apartment, Rowan sat on the edge of his mattress, staring at the ceiling. The quiet pressed against his ears, thoughts racing. He wanted to say no,
To protect his pride.
to keep his world small and safe. But he also wanted to say yes. For Tessa, for himself, for the chance to stop surviving and start living. The next morning, he called Kiera before school. I'll take it, he said. She didn't gush, didn't celebrate. She just said, Good. I'm proud of you. That Friday, they moved in. Kiera helped carry boxes, dressed in jeans and a ponytail, no designer labels in sight. She let Tessa assign rooms and even helped her choose where to tape up her astronaut drawing. In the evening, they sat on the front porch together, watching the neighborhood kids ride bikes down the sidewalk. Rowan handed Kiera soda from the cooler. I don't know how to repay you, he said. You already have, she replied. He raised a brow. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, she said. A life that isn't curated or filtered. One that matters. He sipped his drink. You're really not like anyone I've ever met. I hear that a lot, she said, nudging him playfully. Later that night, after Kiera left, Rowan walked through the new house in his socks, listening to the echoes of his steps on the hardwood. Tessa was asleep in her new room, her favorite stuffed animal tucked under her arm. He paused at the front window, looking out at the street. Porch lights flickered on across the block. Somewhere down the road, someone was playing a guitar on their stoop. He didn't feel like an outsider here. He felt settled. The next few weeks passed in a blur of unpacking, school projects, and backyard soccer games. Kiera visited often not just for him, but for Tessa, who had taken to her like a second shadow. One afternoon, Rowan found Kiera and Tessa in the garage, assembling a skateboard ramp from a kit Kiera had ordered online. Tessa was holding a wrench upside down, and Kiera was reading the instructions like her life depended on it. You know she doesn't even skateboard, right? Rowan asked, leaning in the doorway. She might, Kiera said, tightening a bolt. We're preparing for future interests. He couldn't stop the smile that crept across his face. One evening, after Tessa had gone to bed, Rowan and Kiera sat on the living room floor, eating Chinese takeout straight from the cartons. I thought I'd feel like I owed you something, he said, picking at his low mane. But I don't. I just feel
Lucky.
I don't want you to owe me, she said. I want you to want me. He looked at her.
Ida.
She set down her chopsticks. Then let's stop pretending we're not already building something real. He reached for her hand. What if I mess it up? Then we clean it up together, she said. She leaned in, and this time when she kissed him, it wasn't a promise. It was an answer. The living room buzzed with the low hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. Rowan stood near the fireplace, his tie loose around his neck, watching Tessa dart between the adults with a cupcake in each hand and frosting smeared across her cheek. She was wearing the new blue dress Kiera had brought over last week, its hem fluttering as she ran. "Your daughter may be attempting to bribe the mayor with sugar," Kiera said, appearing at his side with 2 glasses of champagne. Rowan took one, raising an eyebrow. "That's what I get for letting her handle the dessert table." "She's very persuasive," Kiera said, lightly touching her glass to his. "It's a skill." He glanced around the room. The house had never been this full. Neighbors, school parents, a few of Kiera's friends, people from both their worlds came tonight. Not for a fundraiser or a charity gala. Just a backyard gathering with string lights, music, and too much barbecue. He leaned closer. "This is the first time I've seen you like this." "Like what?" she asked. Relaxed. Not half glancing at your phone. Not watching the door like you're waiting to be pulled into a meeting. "I turned my phone off." His brows lifted. I know. Monumental," she said, laughing. "But I wanted tonight to be about this. About you. About us." He looked toward the kitchen, where one of the neighbors was helping Tessa open a soda. "You sure you're okay with this neighborhood attention? It's not exactly your usual crowd." Kiera followed his gaze. "They're kind. They ask questions because they care, not because they're calculating. I like it." He hesitated. "They'll figure out who you are."
"They already have," she said.
"The difference is I don't care if they do anymore." That landed differently. He turned to face her fully. "What changed?" "You did," she said. "You made it safe for me to be someone outside of what I own. You made me stop hiding." Before he could respond, a woman approached a teacher from Tessa's school. "Mr. Sutter, Kiera, I just wanted to say this is lovely. And Rowan, I hope you don't mind, but we added you to the art auction committee. Your name kept coming up." Rowan blinked. "The what?"
The teacher laughed. "Relax.
"It's a few meetings and a fundraiser. But people listen to you. You've got that calm energy." Kiera grinned after the teacher walked away. "Calm energy. That's a new one." Rowan groaned. "What kind of nightmare committee have you dragged me into?" "You're the one throwing community barbecues now," she said. "You're officially one of us." He glanced toward the backyard, where Tessa was showing off her chalk mural on the fence. "She loves it here." "She's thriving," Kiera agreed. "You both are." He looked back at her, his voice low. "You've done a lot for us." Her smile softened. "You've done more than you realize." Later, after the guests had gone, and the backyard was littered with paper plates and half-eaten s'mores, Rowan collected the trash while Kiera tucked Tessa into bed. When she returned, he was sitting on the porch swing with a beer in one hand and the other resting on the seat beside him. She sat down without a word, curling her legs beneath her. "I kept thinking none of this would last," he said softly. "That I'd wake up and it would all be gone." "It's not going anywhere," she said. He stared out at the quiet street. "I was convinced I had to keep things small to keep them safe. That the minute I let something big in, it would fall apart." "I get that," she said. "I used to think the more I controlled, the more protected I'd be. But it just made me feel lonelier." He looked at her, his hand brushing hers. "I don't want to be afraid anymore." "Then don't be." He caught her gaze. "I love you." She drew in a breath, slow, steady. "I love you too." A beat passed before she said, "I've been thinking about what's next." Rowan chuckled. "You? Thinking ahead? Shocking." She nudged him. "I'm serious." "I'm listening." "I want to build something with you. Something that's ours from the ground up." "Like a business?" She shook her head. "Not work. Not money. A life. A future." He turned toward her. "What does that look like to you? Waking up in this house. Backpack mornings. Burnt toast. PTA meetings. A dog, eventually, if Tessa has her way." "She will," he said. "You know she will." "And you," she continued, "next to me. Every day. No more waiting for the other shoe to drop." He took her hand fully then, threading his fingers through hers. "You're sure you want this?" he asked. "Not just the idea of it, but the real, messy, exhausted version of it?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He stared down at their joined hands. "Then marry me." Kiera went still. He looked up. "I mean it. I don't have a ring. I don't have a plan. I just know I don't want another day to pass without you knowing I choose you." Over and over again. Her eyes glistened. "Rowan, I know it's sudden." "It's not," she said. "It's perfect." He exhaled, relief and awe washing over him. "Yes, yes," she whispered. She leaned in, and their kiss was quiet and certain, not rushed, not desperate, just right. The next week, they stood in the courthouse with Tessa between them, holding a bouquet of sunflowers she insisted on picking herself. Kiera wore a simple white blouse. Rowan wore the same blazer he'd worn the night of their first real dinner. They exchanged vows with no crowd, no orchestra, just a promise and a little girl clapping wildly at the end. Afterward, they returned home to a surprise front yard celebration organized by their neighbors' streamers, cupcakes, and someone blasting love songs through an old speaker. Tessa danced barefoot on the grass, dragging Kiera into a spin while Rowan watched, his heart impossibly full. Later that night, as he tucked Tessa into bed and turned off her lamp, she mumbled sleepily, "I like our forever." He kissed her forehead. "Me too." In the living room, Kiera was curled up on the couch, a glass of wine balanced on her knee. She looked up as he entered. "Did she make you promise to let her adopt a turtle again?" "I think she's moved on to a goat." Kiera laughed. "At least it's not a purple one this time." He sat beside her, pulling her close. "You know," he said, "when I first met you, I never imagined this." "I did," she said quietly. He turned his head. "You did." "I didn't know the shape of it yet," she said. "But I knew you were going to change everything." He rested his forehead against hers. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to us," she whispered, "and you're the only thing I never knew I needed." Outside, the streetlight flickered, casting a soft glow through the window. Inside, the quiet beat of a new life formed between them, one built not on wealth or status, but on moments, promises, and love that was earned, not bought. And in the silence, with her head on his shoulder and the familiar creak of the porch swing outside, Rowan finally let himself believe in forever. Rowan adjusted the last photo on the gallery wall, stepping back to make sure it was level. Tessa's drawing, now framed and glinting under the soft overhead lights, sat proudly among the curated pieces. He exhaled, brushing his hands against his jeans as he turned to find Kiera standing near the back of the space, watching him. She wore a pale green wrap dress, her hair pinned up in a loose twist, and a look in her eyes that he knew meant something was coming. "I can't believe this is real," he said, walking over. 2 months ago, we were trying to figure out how to fix the leaky sink, and now we're hosting a local art night in our name." She tucked her hand into his. "You really thought I was going to let your talent sit in a dusty classroom forever?" "I teach math." "You sketch like a man with stories in his hands," she said. "And I just gave them a wall." He looked around the room. Dozens of neighbors, teachers, and a few of Kiera's less extravagant acquaintances had shown up. People were sipping wine, admiring the student artwork hung beside Rowan's quiet, soulful pieces, charcoal drawings of city corners, porch lights at dusk, and the small, overlooked beauty in ordinary life. Tessa tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, come see." "Mrs. Palermo said your drawing of the old bus stop made her cry." "I'm not sure that's a compliment," Rowan said. "It is," Kiera replied. "She said it reminded her of the place her husband proposed to her." He blinked. "Seriously?" She was wiping her eyes for a full minute. Tessa took his hand and dragged him over to the piece in question, leaving Kiera at the edge of the crowd. Her smile lingered, but her fingers twisted the ring on her left hand, something she only did when she was nervous. When Rowan returned, she was staring out the window, lost in thought. "What's going on?" he asked, sliding an arm around her waist. "I spoke to my board this morning," she said, voice low. "I told them I'm stepping back from the foundation." He blinked. "What?" "I've spent the last 10 years running at full speed, building something that was meant to help others. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to leave space for my own life." "And they just let you go?" "They didn't fight me, if that's what you mean. They knew it was coming." She looked up at him. "But I want to use the resources differently now. Smaller scale. Local. Real impact." "You mean like this?" She gestured to the gallery, the community turnout. "Like kids seeing their art on walls. Like funding after-school programs that don't just keep them busy, but teach them something. Like helping people who don't ask for help because they're too busy surviving." He stared at her, stunned. "You're rebuilding your legacy." "I'm rewriting it," she said. "With you." Outside, the sky had turned lavender, the street lamps flickering to life. Tessa was seated beside the snack table, deep in conversation with two other kids about whether dragons would be better at soccer or basketball. Rowan watched her, then looked back at Kiera. "She's happier than I've ever seen her." "She has a home now," Kiera said. "And so do you." The gallery lights dimmed slightly, signaling the end of the event, and people began to trickle out. Rowan stayed behind to help clean up, while Kiera spoke with the art teacher, her speech animated, her eyes bright. When she returned, he handed her a paper cup of lukewarm cider. "Do I get to know what you two were plotting?" "She wants to collaborate with the new community space I'm opening downtown," Kiera said. "She has ideas about integrating art into conflict resolution training." Rowan grinned. "You're unstoppable." "No," she said, glancing at him. "We are." As they walked out into the night, Tessa dozing against Rowan's shoulder, Kiera reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Something I didn't want to give you in front of everyone." He opened it slowly. Inside was a printed contract, several architectural sketches, and a title page that read, "Sutter Studio, a community haven for art, learning, and healing." He looked up, speechless. "I bought the building on 7th, she said. "The one you always pause in front of when we walk downtown. I'm not turning it into another boutique. I'm giving it to you, Kiera." "It's not charity," she said softly. "It's a choice. I believe in what you create. I believe in what we're building. And I want the world to see it too." He swallowed hard. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll do it with me. Say we'll make something that outlives us." Rowan looked down at the drawings. A front room for rotating local art. A side wing for student workshops. A quiet corner for sketching, reading, sitting. A garden in the back. He nodded. "We'll do it together." The next morning, they stood on the sidewalk in front of the building, its windows dusty, its awning faded. But through the grime, Rowan saw it. Potential. Kiera handed him the keys. "Your turn to make the first move," she said. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, Tessa skipping past him in her sneakers. "I call dibs on drawing the sign," she shouted.
Kiera laughed.
"Only if you promise not to draw a dinosaur eating a paintbrush again." It was performance art. Rowan looked around the bare space. The sun streamed through the high windows, casting light across the scuffed floorboards. He reached for Kiera's hand. "This is the start of something bigger than we imagined." "You think so?" she asked. "I know so." They spent the next month renovating. Every weekend was filled with paint-streaked jeans, takeout containers balanced on ladders, and chalkboard sketches of layout ideas. Tessa recruited her classmates to draw murals. Kiera hosted tea with local teachers and artists. Rowan taught basic perspective drawing to kids who had never held a charcoal stick. The day before the grand opening, they stood in the middle of the new space, clean, bright, and full of possibility. "You ready for this?"
Kiera asked.
Rowan nodded. "Absolutely." She leaned in and kissed him, slow and sure. The next evening, the studio doors opened to a packed street. Music played from a speaker in the corner, and a line of students proudly showed off their first framed pieces. Tessa wore a badge that read Creative Director and gave tours to anyone who'd follow. Rowan stood beside Kiera, their hands clasped as people filed in with wonder on their faces. "You built this," she whispered. "No," he said. "We did." As the night wound down, Kiera pulled him aside. "There's one more thing," she said, reaching into her pocket. She handed him a folded piece of paper. Inside was a sonogram. Rowan stared at it, then slowly looked up. "Yours," she nodded, eyes shining. "We're going to need a bigger house." He pulled her into his arms, heart pounding. "We're going to need more than that." "A minivan?" she teased. "A lifetime," he said, kissing her forehead. "With you." The city shimmered around them, but they didn't see it. They only saw each other, their lives, their future, their family. And it was perfect. A year later, the studio was thriving. The house was louder, fuller, warmer. Tessa had a baby brother named Jonah, and she insisted on reading him bedtime stories, usually ones about dragons and art. Rowan painted again. Kiera wrote again. They built a life not of grandeur, but of meaning. One rooted in purpose, in love, in quiet mornings and busy afternoons and evenings filled with laughter. Their story wasn't perfect. It was better. It was theirs. And it would last forever.